You don't understand. My father always said, I'm the oldest. This is what brothers do. We lived on my mother's paycheck, $12 an hour at a department store, 30 hours a week if she was lucky. I learned to count change by watching her budget for groceries. I learned to hide hunger by drinking extra water at dinner. I was 42 years old when the last plate shattered. My mother asked my father for $12.3 new bowls for the kitchen because the ones we had were chipped beyond use. The edges were sharp enough to cut fingers. She'd wrapped them in newspaper and stacked them in the back of the cupboard, but even she couldn't pretend anymore. My father looked up from his phone. His face didn't change. I don't have it. My mother stood in the kitchen doorway. The afternoon light hit her face, and I could see every line. The years of worrying about money, about me, about the weight of carrying 3 people on a single paycheck. She walked to the cupboard, pulled out the newspaper wrap bowls, unfolded them carefully, like she was handling something sacred. Then she threw them against the wall. The sound was sharp and final. Porcelain fragments scattered across the linoleum, glinting in the light. I want a divorce. Her voice was quiet. That's what scared me most. She wasn't screaming. She'd run out of screaming years ago. My father stood up slowly. You're insane. Over $12? Over 30 years. She didn't look at him. She looked at me. I was in my usual spot, the armchair by the window, where I'd spent every holiday visit for the past decade. I'd moved out at 18, never went back. But I still came for Christmas, for birthdays, for the obligation of being a son. Son, she said, who do you choose? She thought she knew the answer. I could see it in her eyes, the certainty that I would pick her, the only parent who'd ever provided anything. My tuition money, my school supplies, the clothes on my back, all from her $12 an hour job while my father funneled his paycheck into his brother's lifestyle. I pulled something from my jacket pocket, tossed it onto the coffee table between us. I choose neither. The room went silent. My mother's face crumpled into confusion. My father just stared at the red booklet. What the hell is that? He asked. Marriage certificate. I sat back down. I'm already married. 6 months ago. My father grabbed it. His hands were shaking as he flipped it open. The date, the names, the official stamp. To who? He demanded. Who the hell would marry you without telling us? Her name is Diane. She's a senior associate at a corporate law firm. I paused. I took her last name. The silence that followed was worse than the screaming. My father's face went from red to white. You're 42 years old. You have a master's degree. You work in private equity. And you became a goddamn house husband. I became her husband. The name change was my decision. You're a ward, he exploded. You're my son. You carry my name, my legacy. Your legacy? I laughed. It came out bitter. What legacy, Dad? The legacy of giving away every dime we had? The legacy of letting Mom work herself into a limp while you played Big Brother? My mother grabbed my arm. Her fingers were cold. When did this happen? Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew this would happen. I gestured around the room, the cracked leather sofa, the water-stained ceiling, the framed photos of me as a child that were the only decorations on the walls. I knew he'd find a way to make it about him. I knew he'd try to get something out of it. I'm your father. Legally, I'm not. I pulled out my phone. I changed my surname, moved my residency. According to the state, I'm not ward anymore. I haven't been for 6 months. My mother sank onto the sofa. Her hand stayed on my arm, but it felt heavier now. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid. I said honestly, not of you, of him, of his brother, of what they'd do when they found out I married someone who actually has money. My father stood frozen. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. I'd seen that look before, the moment when he realized the conversation wasn't going his way, when he needed to pivot. You can't do this, he finally said. You're my son. That's not something you can just opt out of. Watch me. My mother pulled her hand away. The hurt in her eyes was worse than her anger would have been. You're telling me you don't want to be part of this family anymore? Mom, I leaned forward. I'm telling you I don't want to be part of this system anymore. The system where he gives away everything we have to his brother while you work until your feet bleed. The system where I'm expected to be grateful for the scraps left over. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. I raised you. I know. I took her hands. You did. You raised me on a $12 an hour paycheck. You paid for my school supplies with the money from your birthday check from Grandma. You made sure I had breakfast every day even when you didn't eat dinner. My father snorted. Oh, here we go. The martyr speech. I ignored him. Mom, I'm not leaving you, and I'm just not choosing sides in your divorce. You want out of this marriage? I support that. You've wanted out for decades, but I won't be the tiebreaker. I won't be the reason you stay or the reason you go. She was crying now, silent tears that she tried to wipe away before they fell. How did this happen? You were just a boy. I'm not a boy anymore. I stood up. I've been an adult for 24 years, and in all that time, he never changed. He'll never change. I'm not waiting around to see if maybe this time it'll be different. My father finally found his voice. You think you're better than us? You think your fancy job and your rich wife make you better than your own flesh and blood? I think I'm tired. I headed for the door. I think I'm tired of watching Mom suffer. I think I'm tired of pretending this is a normal family. And I think you need to figure out how you're going to handle Uncle Brent when he shows up tomorrow. My father's face went white. What do you mean? The money. I turned back. The house, the restaurant, the school fees. Brent's been living off you for 30 years. That's not generosity, that's enabling. And if mom divorces you, you're going to have to explain to him why the cash flow just stopped. You can't. He took a step toward me. I can. I opened the door. And I'm the one who helped mom get the divorce papers together. I'm the one who's been documenting every transfer to Brent for the past 3 years. Every payment, every promise, every empty vow to pay it back. The accusation hung between us. 3 years. My mother's voice cracked. You've been planning this for 3 years? I've been protecting you for 3 years, I corrected. I knew you weren't strong enough to leave on your own, so I made sure you had a path out. My father stumbled back. He looked old, older than his 62 years. The years of playing the generous older brother had taken a toll he never acknowledged. You did this to me? You've been undermining me for years. Undermining you? I had to laugh. Dad, I'm not the one who took money from my own kid. I'm not the one who let my wife go hungry to prop up a brother who never lifted a finger for anyone but himself. I'm not undermining you, I'm documenting what you've already done. He lunged at me. I didn't move. I'd been ready for this moment for half my life. The moment when my father's violence would finally become visible instead of just passive-aggressive. My mother caught him by the arm. Don't. He pulled back. You defend him? After everything I've done for you? What have you done for me? Her voice was steel now. What have you done for me, Warren? You think I don't know about the money? You think I don't know about the accounts? His face drained of color. Accounts? I asked. My mother didn't look at me. She kept her eyes locked on my father's. I know about the second bank account. I know about the... Shut up. My father's voice was tight. Shut up right now. I know about the investment property. Her voice was getting louder. I know you've been hiding money for years. Your brother isn't the only one you've been giving to. Investment property. I stepped back into the room. What investment property? My mother finally looked at me. He bought a condo in Florida 5 years ago, in his brother's name, with money he told me was going into our retirement. The room went still. Tell me that's not true, I said quietly. Tell me you didn't funnel our future into a property that Brent owns. My father didn't say anything. His silence told me everything. Unbelievable. I laughed, but it came out hollow. I thought you were just bad with money. I thought you were misguided, but you were actually stealing from your own wife. She doesn't understand, he started. I understand just fine. My mother's eyes were steel. I understand that you've been planning to leave me for years. You bought yourself a retirement home while I was still working double shifts. That's not the whole story. Then tell me the whole story, I said. Tell me exactly what you've done with our money. Tell me why you hid it for 5 years. Tell me how many other properties there are. 1. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. Just 1. And it was supposed to be for us, for when I retired. Under his name, my mother said. You put it under his name. Why would you do that unless you wanted to keep me from getting it? My father had no answer. I in the silence. I understood something I'd never fully grasped before. My father hadn't just been careless with money. He'd been strategically hiding it. He'd been building his escape plan while my mother built his dinner plates. 3 years, my mother whispered. He documented 3 years of your transactions. And I've been documenting for 15. 15. She nodded. Every time he transferred money to Brent, I recorded it. Every time he refused to pay a bill, I kept the notice. I have boxes of paperwork in my closet. I've been waiting for the right moment. My father's face went through stages: shock, anger, fear, calculation. I could practically see him running through scenarios, trying to figure out how to spin this. You've been planning this for 15 years, I repeated, and you never said anything? I was afraid, she said quietly, afraid of being alone, afraid of what people would think, afraid I couldn't make it on my own. But you can, I said. You've been making it on your own for years. He's the one who's been taking. My father grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair. I'm leaving. Both of you need to calm down. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Where are you going? My mother's voice cracked. To Brent's. I'm going to get some air. Where? I stepped in front of the door. Where are you going, Dad? Because if it's to your brother's house, I want to know. I want to know who's getting the next payment. Get out of my way. Tell me where you're going and I'll move. For a moment, we were frozen, father and son, facing off in the doorway of a house that had never really felt like home. Fine. His voice was bitter. I'm going to your grandmother's. She's been asking about you. Maybe she can talk some sense into you. She can try. I stepped aside, but I'm not the one who needs sense talked into them. I'm the one who's been paying attention. He stalked out without looking back. The door slammed behind him. My mother and I were alone in the wreckage. I sat down on the arm of the sofa, suddenly exhausted. 15 years, I said. You've been keeping records for 15 years. I didn't know how to leave. She sank onto the floor, her back against the sofa cushion. Every time I thought about it, I thought about the money, that I thought about the groceries. I thought about your college fund. I kept waiting for him to change, to be the man he promised to be when we got married. Did he ever hit you? He didn't need to. She wrapped her arms around her knees. He just made sure I couldn't leave. That was the part that hit me hardest. Not the cheating, not the hiding, the suffocating control of making her feel trapped. All those years of her working herself into exhaustion while he played the generous older brother to everyone but us. When did you know? I asked. When did you know you wanted to leave? She was quiet for a long time. The day he told me he was putting the condo in Brent's name, I was already suspicious. He'd been acting different, more secretive. I hired someone to look into the financial records. You hired an investigator? For $100, she said. Some kid from the college. He found the deed in the county records. Showed me the property, the date, the name. What did you do with the information? Nothing. Her voice was flat. I just kept it and kept going. And now? She looked up at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in decades, an edge of hope. Now I need a lawyer. Already taken care of. I pulled a business card from my pocket. This is Diane's firm. She's got a family law specialist who owes her a favor. You're getting a consultation at no charge. My mother stared at the card. You planned all of this. The marriage, the name change, the lawyer. You had this whole thing mapped out. Not mapped. I sat down next to her, just prepared. I knew the day would come when you couldn't take it anymore. I wanted to make sure you had options when it did. Why didn't you tell me? Because you weren't ready to hear it yet. I put my arm around her shoulders. I've been watching you get ready for years. I just needed you to take the first step. But that's what I'm telling you. She looked at me with that hope that terrified me. I don't need him to buy me a new condo, that I don't need fancy things, that I just want 3 bowls. I just want them not to break. We sat together on the cracked linoleum, surrounded by the fragments of plates and the shards of 30 years of quiet suffering. Tomorrow, I said, when Brent shows up, he's going to try to talk you out of the divorce. He's going to bring the whole family, your mother-in-law, your sisters-in-law, everyone who's ever taken money from this house. I know. My mother's voice was steady. I've been preparing for tomorrow for years. I can be here if you want. I can help you face them. She shook her head. No, you've done enough. This is mine to handle. That scared me more than anything. She was finally taking ownership of her life, her choices, her future. The nightmare was ending. When this is over, I said, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. Maybe I'll move to Florida. You said Diane wants to get away from the city. Maybe you will. I squeezed her shoulder. Whatever you want to do, Mom, it's your choice. Everything's my choice now. We waited in the silence. In the distance, a siren wailed. My father's car had long since faded from the driveway. Above us, the house ticked and groaned with old pipes, old floors, old secrets. The thing about 30 years, my mother said, is that you can't fix it. You can only cut your losses and move forward. Mom, it's all right. She got up, brushing the dust from her pants. I thought I'd feel more, I don't know, sad, but I just feel tired and relieved and maybe a little scared. That's okay. I stood with her. You should be scared. It means you're paying attention. We looked around at the cracked kitchen floor, the stains on the wall, the mismatched furniture that had been gathering dust since I was a child. The house had never been a home. It had been a prison with a view of the backyard. I'm going to get the paperwork, I said. The lawyer says you need to file within 72 hours of the separation. Tonight? Tonight. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'll have the forms sent over electronically. Is Diane going to be? She'll be there if you want her. I paused at the door. She's not just my wife. She's also a lawyer who wants to help you get the best possible outcome. Then I have a chance to get a new house. My mother said quietly, I can get something small. I'm not looking to be rich. Let's start with getting you out. I opened the door. We can think about the house later. Outside, the street was quiet. The neighbors' houses were dark except for a single porch light. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked at the moon. Brent is going to tear you apart tomorrow, I said. He'll bring the whole family, and they'll all talk at once. They'll try to guilt you into staying. They'll call you ungrateful, selfish, a monster for breaking up the family. I know. My mother's voice was steel. I've been preparing for this my whole life. Did you? I stopped. Did you ever think about doing it when I was younger? Of course. She sat down heavily on the porch steps, but I didn't have the guts. I was afraid of being alone with nothing. Now you have something. Now I have evidence. She managed a smile. 15 years of evidence. I've got enough paperwork to sink the whole family. We sat on the porch while the crickets sang. My mother's hand was steady on the rail, and my feet dangled over the top step. My father would never admit what he's done, I said. He'll blame you, blame me, blame everyone but himself. I know. My mother's voice was calm. That's why I took the recording. I froze. The what? The recording. She pulled out her phone. I've been recording every conversation for the past 6 months. Everyone he's had about money. I stared at her. 6 months, I repeated. That's legal? She shrugged. It's a one-party consent state. You can record any conversation you're a party to. I've been documenting his admissions for months. My mother, the silent, exhausted woman I'd watched sacrifice everything for her family, had been recording her husband's financial shenanigans in secret. You're a different person, I said slowly. A different person than I thought you were. I'm still the same person. She put the phone away. I've just been saving my anger for the right moment. The door burst open. A man stood there, haggard, panting, holding a suitcase. Get ready, Brent said. We're going to have to fight this. You can't fight a recorded conversation, my mother said. The look on Brent's face was absolutely priceless. They arrived at 9 in the morning that I knew because I've been sitting in my car across the street since 7, watching the house, and my mother had texted me at 6:30. They're coming. Brent brought Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Carol. I didn't reply. I just waited. The first car pulled into the driveway at 8:50, a brand new BMW that Brent had bought 6 months ago. Behind it, a battered sedan with my grandparents inside. My father's car was already in the garage, which meant he'd come back sometime during the night. I wondered if he'd slept in his car, or if my mother had actually let him in. The front door opened before anyone could knock. My mother stood there in her housecoat, arms crossed, looking like she'd been waiting for this moment for decades. "Come in," she said. "I've been expecting you." I got out of my car and walked across the street. The grass was wet with morning dew, and the air smelled like cut grass and gasoline. Someone down the block was mowing their lawn at 8 in the morning on a Sunday. By the time I reached the front door, the living room was already full. My grandmother was on the sofa, clutching her purse like a shield. My grandfather sat in the armchair, his cane across his knees. Brent stood in the center of the room, hands on his hips, trying to look authoritative. His wife, Patricia, hovered near the kitchen doorway, and my father was slumped in the corner like a man who'd already lost a fight he hadn't known he was in. Then there was my cousin, Bradley, Brent's son, 18 years old, and dressed like he'd just rolled out of a fraternity party. He looked confused, like someone had dragged him here without explaining why. Here he is. Brent pointed at me, the prodigal son, the one who's been poisoning his mother against us. "Good morning to you too, Uncle Brent." I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. "Nice car. Did you pay for it with the money you borrowed from Dad?" "I didn't borrow. Your new BMW costs $60,000. You bought it 3 months after Dad gave you the last $10,000 for Bradley's school fees." I pulled out my phone. I have the dates, the amounts, and the bank statements. My grandmother stood up so fast her purse fell to the floor. "How dare you speak to your uncle like that? He's family." "He's family the same way a leech is family," I said. "He attaches himself and drains everything until there's nothing left." "Watch your mouth." My grandfather slammed his cane on the floor. The sound echoed off the old walls, rattling the framed photos. "Grandpa, sit down before you hurt yourself." I moved toward the center of the room. "You're not going to like what I have to say next." Brent stepped forward. "You think you can just waltz in here and lecture us? You're not even part of this family anymore. You changed your name. You abandoned us." "I didn't abandon anyone." My voice stayed level. "I made a choice about my own life, something you've never let anyone in this family do." Patricia finally spoke from the kitchen doorway. "This is ridiculous. We came here to talk about the divorce, not to be attacked by some what?" I turned to her. "Go ahead. Finish that sentence." She went quiet. "Look," Brent said. "We didn't come here to fight. We came to help your mother. She's clearly not thinking straight. She's been under a lot of pressure. She needs support." "Support?" I laughed. "You've been taking money from this family for 30 years. You own a house that Dad bought for you. You own a restaurant that Dad funded. Your son's private school was paid for with money that should have gone to my education, and you're standing here talking about support." My father stirred in the corner. "Son, that's enough." I haven't even started. I pulled out my laptop. I brought a presentation. I thought everyone should see exactly where the money went. "A presentation?" My grandmother looked horrified. "What kind of person brings a presentation to a family meeting?" "The kind who's tired of watching his mother get cheated." I set the laptop on the coffee table, opened it, and clicked play. The screen showed a timeline, 30 years of transactions, neatly organized by year, amount, and recipient. "This is just the past 10 years, I said. "That's $240,000. $240,000 that Dad transferred to Brent's accounts while my mother was working double shifts at the mall." The room went silent. Even my father stopped breathing. "Look at 2018. I continued. "That's the year Brent bought his first house. The down payment came entirely from Dad, $35,000. Meanwhile, my mother was taking the bus to work because our car broke down and Dad said there was no money to fix it." My mother made a small sound. Not quite a sob, not quite a sigh. She was watching the screen like she'd never seen this information before, even though she'd been the one to document most of it. Brent's face was turning red. "That money was a gift. He told me it was a gift." "Did he?" I turned to my father. "Dad, was it a gift?" My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "I don't remember." "You don't remember?" I clicked to the next slide. "Good thing I have the receipts." I held up a piece of paper. "This is a note you wrote to yourself the day you gave him the money. Loan to Brent, to be repaid when his business turns around. That's your handwriting. I'd recognize it anywhere." The room erupted. My grandmother started shouting about forgery. My grandfather banged his cane. Patricia fled to the kitchen. Bradley just stared at the screen, his mouth open. 2020. I pressed on, raising my voice to be heard. "That's the year Brent's restaurant failed. And what did Dad do? He gave him $50,000 more to keep the business afloat. IT didn't work. The restaurant closed 6 months later, and we never saw that money again. Because it was a gift." Brent was shouting now. "He told me it was a gift." "Did he tell you that when you came to him crying?" I asked. "Did he tell you that when you were begging him to save your business?" Brent opened his mouth, but my grandfather cut him off. "Enough." The old man struggled to his feet. "This is not how families resolve their problems. You're the one who's tearing this family apart. You and your mother and your ridiculous accusations." "Accusations?" I laughed. Grandpa, I have proof. I have receipts, bank statements, recorded phone calls, and a note written in Dad's own handwriting. I could take this to court, and I would win. The room went still again. The words hung in the air like a challenge. You wouldn't do that, my grandmother whispered. You wouldn't take your own family to court. Wouldn't I? I closed the laptop. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Mom is filing for divorce. She's going to get half of everything Dad owns, including the condo in Florida that he put in Brent's name. Patricia's head snapped up. What condo? The room went deathly quiet. Florida, I repeated. Didn't anyone tell you? Dad bought a condo in Florida 5 years ago. Put it in Brent's name to keep Mom from finding out. It's worth $350,000. Patricia turned to her husband. You have a condo in Florida? It's not. Brent looked around wildly. It's not what it sounds like. Your dad was just helping me invest. Invest? My mother spoke for the first time. That's what you called it when you asked him to buy property in your name, but we both know it wasn't an investment. IT was a secret. A secret you kept from me and your own wife. Patricia had gone pale. You've been hiding a condo from me? For 5 years. Everything's been hidden. My mother's voice was steady now. Every dollar your husband's ever gotten from mine has been hidden. And Patricia, before you say this is none of my business, let me tell you something. You've been married to my husband's brother for 20 years. You've eaten at my dinner table. You've worn clothes I couldn't afford to buy, and you never once asked where the money came from. Patricia was crying now. Bradley had moved to stand beside his mother, his arm around her shoulders. He looked at his father with something close to disgust. It's true, isn't it? Bradley's voice was quiet but clear. The money for my school, the money for the car, it all came from Uncle Warren. Bradley, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. He stepped away from his father. I always wondered why you never wanted me to apply for scholarships. You said it was because I deserved the best. But really, you just wanted the money to keep coming. The room was spinning into chaos. Brent was shouting at Bradley, Patricia was screaming at Brent, and my grandparents were arguing about who was to blame. I watched my father throughout all of this. He sat in his corner, and for the first time in my life, I saw something other than anger in his eyes. I saw fear. Dad, I said quietly, we need to talk. He looked up, and for a moment, I saw the man he used to be, the tired, overwhelmed husband who had never been able to say no to his family. I didn't mean for it to get this bad, he said. I was trying to help. By hiding money, by lying to your wife, by stealing from your own child. He flinched at the word. I lowered my voice, so only he could hear. Here's what's going to happen. Mom's going to file for divorce. She's going to get the house, and she's going to get the money you've been hiding. Brent's going to have to either pay back everything he owes, or he's going to lose the condo and whatever else you've signed over to him. And me. I looked at my father. You're going to have to decide what kind of man you want to be, the kind who steals from his family to prop up his brother, or the kind who finally admits he's been wrong for 30 years. Warren. Brent's voice cut through the chaos. Warren, you can't let them do this to us. Tell them it was a gift. Tell them you wanted me to have that condo. My father stood up slowly. The room went silent as everyone watched him. 30 years, he said. I've given you 30 years of my life. Every paycheck, every bonus, every chance I had to help you get ahead. And you know what I've never gotten? A thank you. A return on my investment, that a single night where you paid for dinner. Brent's face was white. Warren, what are you? I'm done. The words came out flat and exhausted. I'm done with you. I'm done with this family. And I'm done pretending that any of this was about love. Brent took a step forward. You don't mean that. I mean every word. My father turned to my mother. You want a divorce? Fine. You want half of everything? Take it. I don't even care anymore. My mother was crying, not the kind of quiet, repressed tears she'd shed for 30 years, but loud, messy sobs that shook her whole body. All the years of silent suffering were finally being released. Dad, I said, that's. I know what I said. He cut me off. And I meant it. I've spent my whole life making everyone else happy, my mother, my father, my brother, and I've never once considered what I actually wanted. And what I want now is to be alone. No one spoke. Brent. My father pointed at the door. Get out. Warren. Get out. His voice cracked. And don't call me again. Not for money, not for help, not for anything. We're finished. Brent looked around the room, searching for allies. My grandparents stared at the floor. Patricia had turned her back to him. Bradley was somewhere between shock and relief. We'll talk about this when you've cooled down, Brent said finally. Call me when you're ready to be reasonable. He grabbed his wife and son and walked out. The front door slammed, and the room seemed to exhale. My mother sank onto the sofa. My grandparents were frozen, unsure what to do next. I stood in the center of the room, caught between relief and something I hadn't expected, sorrow. Grandma, I said. Grandpa, you should go too. This is between Dad and Mom now. My grandmother opened her mouth to argue, but my grandfather took her arm. He's right. Let's go. He gave me a long look, confused, angry, maybe a little impressed. You did what you had to do. I didn't know if that was a compliment or an accusation. After they left, it was just the three of us, my mother, my father, and me. My parents stood on opposite sides of the room, separated by 30 years of resentment. What happens now? My mother asked. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. Now we get you a lawyer. I pulled out my phone. Diane's waiting. She's already drafted the petition and the separation agreement. I'll have the papers delivered this afternoon. My father didn't say anything. He just stood there, an old, broken man who'd finally been cornered by the truth. What about Dad? I asked. He made his bed. My mother's voice was cold. Let him lie in it. We were standing in the kitchen of the house I'd grown up in, the house where I'd watched my mother sacrifice everything for a man who never deserved it. The three of us were all that remained of the family we'd once been, and the fault lines between us would take a lifetime to heal. I'll get you the papers by tonight. I told my mother. I'll meet you at Diane's office tomorrow morning. We can finalize everything then. She nodded, but her eyes were on my father. He wouldn't meet her gaze. And me, he asked, what am I supposed to do? I looked at him, my father, the man who'd made every possible mistake, but who'd finally owned up to his failures. You figure out how to be alone for the first time in your life. He looked at me, and for a moment I saw the man he used to be, the man who'd once made me feel like I mattered. Son, he said, I don't know how to do this alone. Then I guess you'll have to learn. I turned and walked out of the house. The sunlight was blinding. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. I couldn't hear anything else. My phone buzzed as I got into my car. How'd it go? Diane's voice was warm, reassuring. Better than I expected. Worse than I hoped. That means something happened. Want to talk about it? Later. I started the engine. For now, I just want to get out of here. Then come home. We can order in. I smiled. Home, I repeated. I like the sound of that.